Arcus 8875. It's always entertaining to watch a survivor try to escape with a femoral artery lacerated. Some victims actually get quite far before shock and cardiac arrest overwhelm them. They fight and struggle for life as if death were final. Perhaps this is the reason the entity wipes the slate clean with every resurrection. The fear of death is the pulse of life, and believing death is real gives emotion to the experience. In other words, feeds the entity. Who exactly is the Observer? He is the narrator of all memories and logs found in the archives, all the while living in a subrealm that is shielded from the entity. The Observer has a unique power in which he can search the entity's fog and discover memories and stories from within its realms. Using a device called the auris, he is able to probe for these memories that are stored in the fog once a character is taken from their world. Through this device, the players can access a series of challenges to help them piece together these memories and their overall role. Before we take a deeper look at his entries within the archives, let's hear the Observer's own words describing his horror-based experience.
Searching for a way to escape this endless horror has been my sole preoccupation. To this end, I study memories embedded in the black fog. Memories from survivors and killers who have escaped or who will escape this timeless dimension. Some embrace the trials while they desperately search for a way out. Others don't even realize they're imprisoned and are made to relive an endless cycle of horror. And still others lose their ability to feel or act and are flushed into the great emptiness that is the void.
We can start to get a better understanding of who the Observer is by reading through some of the entries found in the archives. In Tome 1, we learn that the Observer has lost track of time and refers to himself as a prisoner within. Arcus 1. I would start at the beginning, but I don't know when that was or how long ago I was banished to this prison. What I know is I've been observing and studying the inner workings of this entity that once had been, well, an obsession. How ironic that I should be sentenced to live out the rest of my days in the very thing I sought to destroy. An obsession turned prison, as all obsessions are, I suppose. That entry makes it clear that the Observer was familiar with the entity beforehand, so much so that the entity was an academic subject he set out to vanquish. Was he alone in this task? Arcus 1118 tells us that he and others were studying multiple entities before he was taken. Dread and despair soon overtook me, and I began to realize how arrogant we were back home to try and define and describe these living cosmic entities. We thought we had figured most out. We barely scratched the surface. Both those entries are very interesting. My initial thoughts focus on how he described it as a prison and his word use of banished. The immediate question being, banished from where? Continuing on, Arcus 731 reads, hard to tell where one day ends and another begins. The tower and the library help me cope, but it's hard to forget the truth of my situation even for a moment, knowing everything I have is a lie. I have access to anything I want, and yet I have nothing. The survivors continue to undergo the trials with the most brutal of killers. I continue to search the fog for the memories of those who have found a way to escape. It sometimes feels like a futile search, but then again, I've got time in my hands. Lots of time. Most of his entries are bleak. There are a few that give insight that the Observer is not completely unhappy in his position. We encounter the first mention of his whiskey drink that he loves so much in Arcus 293. Things could have been worse. I could have been banished in a dimension without arc fog containing the memory imprints of countless victims, memories that keep me entertained and busy with my coin and spirit collections, and the music. The variations from parallel worlds, it helps pass the time. In a twisted way, I think what I'm admitting is that I'm glad the entity takes what it wants when it wants from the Omniverse. If you were like me and originally thought the entity was something of only this world, well, whatever that means, it appears to be more vast than that since he writes of parallel worlds and an Omniverse. Arcus 984 shows a vision he had of a world in which the survivors are living a normal life. More luminous energy sent to me by an unknown ally. With this energy, I was able to open a small window that allowed me to look into a lost realm where I saw, to my great surprise, a city with survivors living as though nothing was out of the ordinary. The window eventually closed, and I spent the entire evening imagining how such a thing could be possible, or if it was merely an illusion. In Arcus 7547, the observer talks about his dreams of other places. Dreams of home, with friends and family enjoying time lost. So many paintings and statues I had created from memories of other worlds. Shattered. So where exactly is home then? We do learn the name of the realm the observer is from in Arcus 182. I have discovered structures within the realms of the entity that remind me of home. It is possible others from Terra Primus have found themselves marooned within the entity. These survivors could have with them knowledge to free me from this tower and possibly ideas on how to escape this infernal dimension. As far as I know, we were one of the first of many worlds to begin unraveling these great cosmic mysteries and proving that planets and solar systems were, well, alive. These discoveries led to entire paradigm shifts that unlocked for us our ability to travel from dimension to dimension. Where once we thought our knowledge was absolute, these discoveries showed us how little we actually knew about the world. Arcus 437 reads specifically about Terra 917. It is of course in relation to whiskey. I'm going to have a couple shots of whiskey from Terra 917, experience a few memories, then head to bed. The warmth of spirits from 917 have always had a way of lulling me away. Arcus 2903 goes into further detail of a typical day for the observer, as well as things he likes from the different Terra. I rose early to experience a few deaths in the archives I recently captured from the Rift. I had some milk from Terra 728. I listened to a radio show from Terra 232. Horror stories and tales of terror. I read a new version of Dante's Inferno from, not sure where. I thought of home, had some whiskey, and slept for what felt like an eternity. He goes into deep contemplation in Tome 2, Arcus 328. There is a curiosity at the core of every thinking person, a need for knowledge from uncharted and unknowable territories, but what is discovered in those blank spaces of the abyss? Of the cosmos are things far too immense to understand. Things better left unobserved lest they undermine our sanity. Better to embrace ignorance than face the truth of our insignificance in the grand scheme of it all. Against the vastness of the infinite, we are mere microbes swirling in an endless, indifferent cosmic stew. I say stew, but the entity is probably more of a blood pudding. With a reach so immense as the entity has, it makes sense that the observer has learned how to use the auris tool to navigate. In Arcus 767, he speaks on how it functions and also mentions that there was a council aware of the tool. The auris was little understood back home, and to be fair, I wasn't given the chance to explain its merits to the council. Had they taken the time to understand, they would have realized that though I had no verifiable explanation for how the auris works, I had theories. And the most reasonable was that the auris works on the basis of the Trinitarian. The Trinitarian of creation, a concept long held by our ancestors and forgotten through the ages, but the concept isn't complicated, isn't witchcraft, isn't a secret. It simply suggests that it takes two things to create a third: a father, a mother to create a child, an idea and passion to create something new, something real, something lasting and meaningful, a thought and a feeling. Therein lies the best theory of the auris and how it is able to create with auric particles. So why does the observer keep records on everything he learns? Arcus 7456 tells us that part of it is the fear of him losing himself and his memories into the void. I am taking notes under incredible mental strain. I have had flashes of survivor memories overrun my senses all day, and I'm trying to focus on home and gather myself. I haven't used the auris for some time, and yet I have been pulled in and out of these lives randomly. These records, these archives will, I imagine, help me remember myself should the auris nudge me into the abyss. We know that multiple people have researched and sought out the entity. Is it possible that some are still doing this, or are they directly searching for the observer himself? Arcus 3212 and 968 give us some insight. From a window, I see something moving with an uncanny light. Through the black fog, it shines there, beckoning me, and yet I cannot leave. I cannot move. I can only bring things to me through the auris. What light is this? Is it a creature sent by the entity? Is it a survivor? Or perhaps it's a maroon soul from back home searching like myself for a way back. Strange. Luminous markings left in the trials for survivors and killers that help me navigate and study rifts with greater ease. Someone is trying to reach out to me, tampering with the entity, using tricks to secure my attention, to let me know I'm not alone, to let me know I'm not the only one able to manifest within the entity. Yet the knowledge of living dimensions and ancients is knowledge few have developed amongst the infinite terra worlds within the known galaxies. Mixed in with all the mystery and horror is someone with a sense of humor. How is it possible that the observer received a birthday party invitation? Arcus 129. I knock at the door and an invitation attached to a bottle of whiskey waiting for me at the foot of the door. I kneel to inspect the invitation. You are cordially invited to the entity's birthday. The entity has a birthday? Am I losing my mind? My grip on reality? Whatever that actually means here? Is this some kind of prank by a maroon soul? While I was reading through the observer's entries, I began to wonder if he was vulnerable to physical harm. It seems it is possible, according to Arcus 7294. I woke up soaked in blood with no recollection of what transpired the night before. The blood dripped off my nose and chin. I felt my forehead and scalp to discover a deep stinging gash. Accident? Self-inflicted? Nightmares of the fog? Creatures of the abyss? I didn't know. Later by the bed, I discovered a purple mound of flesh and gore. I cleaned the slop and tossed it out the window into the abyss from which it had come. Additionally, the observer was once attacked in his tower. In Arcus 8557, he writes, "Squid-like creatures difficult to describe attempt to penetrate my tower, try and destroy my study and tools to explore and manifest. I held them off for as long as I could, then, taking the auris and other valuables, I rushed through a doorway and hid in a lost realm. When I returned, the tower was upside down, my study completely ransacked. The creatures lay dead on the floor with black putrid blood leaking out of them. What are these creatures and who is sending them if not this brutish monster of an old one?" The observer also has the ability to look into other realms that give information that is not solely based upon survivors or killers. At least not directly, for now. Arcus 1007. A new doorway has opened. Through the door of my study and into a lost and forgotten realm. Moss-grown, stone homes with doorways barricaded with wagons, planks of wood, and decaying corpses and barbed wire. I walk by the homes gazing at the residual memories of soldiers killing villagers with swords for no other reason than the thrill of it. I can't make out which era or terra world this realm is from. I search the realm for hints of how one may open an actual doorway back home. Somewhere in these memories and forgotten realms is the answer to my salvation, but which ones? Which ones indeed? Tome 6 gives us clear insight that the observer that we know is not the original being, body, or spirit-like figure to have the role as observer. Arcus 2. I am going through some past scribblings of the notes of the previous unknown occupants. Reading these notes, I decipher several voices who I aptly calling the unknown few who, like myself, have a fixation with the entity and who, like myself, have an ability to experience the memories encoded into the fog. I will include my past scribblings and number them as best I can, referring to them as notes obscura or just obscura to try and piece together how long I've actually been here. I think I may have found my first ramblings amongst the half-destroyed journals of the unknown occupants. The next entry, Obscura, is fascinating. It suggests that there have been up to 9 previous observers. However, it definitely reads that they were not as systematic as the current observer that we know. I've found scattered about this tower countless journals from previous occupants. Occupants might not be the best way to describe them. Prisoners would be more fitting. 8 or 9 of them from the distinct voices I deciphered in the manifold journals. I read with surprising interest and alacrity. Some of the unknown prisoners shared my unusual penchant for beer, whiskey, and stories of the macabre. Others seemed to be raving lunatics writing not journals but senseless notes. Notes from the absurd, I call them. They had been piled up and set ablaze, but quickly extinguished with some sort of putrid rotting sludge. I cleaned the chamber and stacked all the stories in piles to go through and organize at a later date. For the time being, I see no reason to remove them from what I am now calling the Chamber of Blood. As we approach the end, we should contemplate how long he will be able to keep his mind together in the fog. If the observer was given the chance to end the entity, would he? It seems he has struggled with his sanity, yet keeps his desire to destroy it. Perhaps that is what diminished those that came before him. Arcus 223. I felt an uncanny and unseen presence in the archives as I contemplated the entity. I could hear the labored breathing of killers standing outside my prison. I looked out into the dark, raging fog and saw nothing. Either the entity is aware of my presence and is preparing to send killers to put an end to my plans, or the memories of survivors are somehow merging with my personal memories and these sounds are mere side effects of overusing the auris. In the end, it doesn't matter. If I could end the entity, I would, even if it meant my own demise. My life is little to pay for the salvation of the worlds it will destroy. Even with all these amazing entries and descriptions, the observer himself ponders if he has recorded the memories correctly. Arcus 985. I am wondering, how do I keep myself out of my own creations? The memories I attempt to record as fast as I experience them prove one thing to me. They show me objectivity is impossible, or elusive at best, and I'm never quite sure if my logs are true or accurate depictions of the subject's memory or a whiskey-laden interpretation of a nightmare. To add to my frustrations, I have recently noticed that other voices have made their way into my notes, other interpretations, other thought patterns from people whose memories I've likely spent too much time reliving. They are becoming part of me, and that wasn't supposed to happen. Well, we've made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed the adventures of information from the archives showing us who the Observer is. I personally find the Dead by Daylight lore outstanding and want to acknowledge what a great job the game creators have done. Do you have a favorite part of his story or a different theory than what is written? If so, put them in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. This series, Tales from the Original Ones, is a DBD lore narrative that I plan to create for each character of the game. It should be noted that it's fun to think that additional stories will continue to be released as new tomes come out. My name is Drumroll Tony and I stream Dead by Daylight on Twitch as my main gaming content. Catch me live and let me know which lore video you would like to see next. Have a great day and thank you again for watching.